must remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
Good morning, welcome to You Must Remember This. This morning's guest is an actor. He's been treading the boards for a long time. We'd like to welcome Lloyd Cunnington.
Thank you, Mike.
Of course, you haven't been an actor all your life. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in WA, Mike. I was born just outside of Perth, and farming community, and I found myself becoming a farmer, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it wasn't farming, and because things were pretty tough then. That was in the 30s, of course. That was the end of the big depression, and work was very hard to get, and money harder than work to get, where the basic wage was like £3 a week, and you had to keep a family on that. But of course, along came the war in 1939, and I found myself joining up with the army, but that was the militia I was in actually just before the war. And
Now, was the militia a full-time job?
No, but we got paid for weekend camps, and you'd do a fortnight, and you'd get, I think it was 5 shillings a day. I think it was 5 shillings a day, which is, in modern terms, 50 cents.
50 cents?
Yes, 50 cents a day, and we thought we were made. And the war started, and the AIF was, they called for volunteers for the AIF, and an expeditionary force of 20,000, which became, of course, the 6th Division. But I didn't get into that. I joined the Air Force.
Now, why did you do a flip like that?
I don't know, because I come from a family. My father was in the First World War. He went away with the 10th Light Horse into Egypt, and after the war he stayed on because he was a permanent soldier. But the legacy of things that happened during the war, he was a sick man really, and he shouldn't have been allowed to carry on, but he was, in other words, he was invalided out.
Yeah.
But then to carry on, or carry the flag, so to speak, with the family, my brother joined pre-war days. He joined the permanent army, and I thought I was destined to be a serviceman myself, because that was, acting, of course, was nowhere on the horizon.
But it's quite a contrast between a professional soldier or airman to treading the boards. Now, where did the seed actually start, do you think?
Yeah, well, they call for volunteers like you and you.
Oh, right.
We want you, we're putting on a show, we want you to, any musicians here? Yeah, right, well, you move the piano.
A bit like the Goons in the way they met and set up, I suppose.
Just about.
Yeah.
And I went into a couple of army shows, and then when I joined the Air Force, the bug had bitten me, I think, so I found myself doing a few Air Force, or we called them reviews. They must have been pretty ghastly in retrospect, but still.
Yeah.
We got a few laughs, and that was what it was all about, really.
So where were you based when you were in the Air Force?
I was based many places in Australia. Strangely enough, although I was in the RAAF, I found myself attached to the British RAF with the Spitfire Squadron in Darwin, and then from the Spitfire Squadron, I found myself then attached, nothing to do with me, someone up above just says, you go there, you go here. And I was with the Dutch Air Force, attached to the Dutch Air Force.
Okay.
And then finally I did get to be with the RAAF with a fighter squadron. So of 3 squadrons, it was sort of under 3 flags, as it were.
Right.
Serving under 3 flags.
A true international, the cosmopolitan.
But oddly enough, I didn't get out of Australia to push the hordes back or do it.
When the war finished,
Yeah.
and you stood there in your civvies,
Yeah.
what now?
Well, it's the most extraordinary feeling, Mike, after you've been 6 years in uniform, to suddenly find yourself in civvies. You feel awkward in the extreme. At least I did. I'm speaking personally, of course. And I thought, oh, I've got to get back into uniform again.
Almost like an agoraphobia.
Yes.
Make
yes.
your own. Suddenly, you have to make your own decisions.
Yes.
Decide when you've got to get up and when you go to bed.
You couldn't be more correct on that. I had to shake that off, of course. That was stupid, really. When I think about.
I don't think it was stupid. I mean, I've been in a similar situation where suddenly the men you are with become your family.
Yes.
Isn't it?
It
and
was.
To leave them, it's like a divorce. It's a trauma.
Well, only yesterday, the 10th of November 2002, I did went to Point Cook, which is the original Air Force base for the RAAF.
Yeah.
And it is now up for sale, which is, I think, tragic. But I felt so at home, and I'm sitting talking to people who are weighed down all over on one side, where they've got so many medals, DFCs and you name, Croix de Guerres, etc., etc., etc. And I just, not that I haven't got anything, but I just felt so at home with these people because we all dined in the officers' mess. I just felt so at home again yesterday.
Even the smell of the drill hall is sort of that.
Yeah, yes.
Come back.
But getting back to the theatre, I got back into civvies. As I said, I felt rather awkward about it. But I had met this one or two actors in the Air Force who had been professional actors and went back into it again. And we did these awful reviews. And I'm neither singer, dancer, juggler, or any of those things. And I thought, well, how can I get into theatre? So I went and I got rid of what we call an Australian accent, tried to get rid of it. Whether I ever succeeded, I don't know.
Yeah, the Australian accent wasn't in fashion.
No, it was not in fashion.
Terrible,
no. It was quite extraordinary. Radio work was my first attempt at sort of professional acting. And in those days, the radio was, of course, the television of the day, so to speak, in the way of entertainment. Everyone used to turn their radio on at night and listen to Dad and Dave and this.
Sure did.
I can't even think of their names now.
No,
but
the radio plays were there for us.
Yes,
I remember,
and serials, Biggles and all those different things. And of course, we were all breaking our neck to work in radio, which was commercial and ABC. So you had to be able to forget your Australian accent when you were with the ABC, and when you were with the commercial, you had to forget your pseudo-English accent.
Yeah.
So it was a battle of the voices.
Now, you went to London, didn't you, for
Yes,
a
I
bit of a
did.
stint?
But that, I went there after I'd been in the theatre here for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
I toured with some J.C. Williamson plays, and I couldn't get above being understudy and small part player and ASM and all those sort of things. So I thought, blow this, I'm off to England to see if I can make the big time.
Right. So how did you find work in England? I mean, did you have a job waiting for you, or did you just step off the boat and say,
Well, I had an intro to an agent,
Mhm.
and she was a very good agent, Miriam Warner, and the first thing she said, of course, you'll have to get rid of that Australian accent. That was my first 2 minutes with her in the
Yep.
office.
What was the first job?
It was in rep, of course.
Mm.
I went to a place up in New Brighton.
Did you enjoy it, and how long were you there?
At New Brighton,
Ah, yes. How
10
long?
weeks.
Oh,
10 weeks.
right. That's all right.
And then we went across with the same company to Huddersfield.
Huddersfield, lad. Did you like it? Why?
Well, you know, trying to get around that accent was a bit of a trouble.
So you got a fair bit of work then.
I.
Oh, aye. You got some work then, did you? You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good,
you
yeah.
know. I was able to keep my head above water, not get in debt.
Did you ever meet the stars? I mean, did you ever meet sort of the Trevor Howards and the Laurence Oliviers?
Yes, I did.
Ooh.
As a matter of fact, I worked with Laurence Olivier,
Yeah.
and we were told to keep out of his sight when he
No.
came off stage, because it was Richard III. A horse,
My kingdom for a horse. This is going to be terrible. I think we will start on all day on this.
And I happened to be behind the
Sorry,
big sight.
I keep on thinking about the lines. Now is the winter. I mean, it's
Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this sun of yore.
oh, isn't it
And
lovely?
all those clouds that lowered upon this house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now were our brows bowed with victorious wreath, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our strange alarms changed to merry meetings.
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? That's lovely. Oh.
And
So what?
keep
Sorry,
out
was
of
he a
his way,
superstar?
keep out of his way.
The
And
superstar, and that was
I
it all?
just happened to be behind the scrim as he came hurling round, and it was a point of no return. I was halfway across the stage,
Yeah.
like backstage that
Yeah.
is. Do I turn around and run ahead of him
Scarper.
because he was going at such a pace,
Yeah.
or do I just, and I
Yeah.
sort of backed up against the wall because there's not much room, you know, behind backstage and things. And he grabbed me by the shoulder. He said, "Enjoying yourself, dear boy? Enjoying yourself?"
No kidding. You were touched by God.
I was. He was God then.
Now, okay, so you're in London now. Let's go back to that part.
Yes.
And you're making a living,
Yes.
doing very well on stage.
Yes.
So what made you leave and come back to Australia?
You've asked a very touchy question.
Probing journalist. Got it.
There was did you ever know of the Elizabethan Trust Theatre Company?
Yes, indeed.
Right. Well, an English director, Hugh Hunt, was the man running things then. Well, for the Olympic Games here in Melbourne, they were going to put on Ned Kelly. Leo McKern,
Oh, yeah.
myself, and one or two others were co-opted or coerced or offered the job, whichever term you want to handle, you want to put to it, to come back to it. It's terrible saying coerced, it's ridiculous. We were offered the job, and we came back here to play in Ned Kelly, with Leo McKern playing Ned Kelly, and one or two others whose names I just forget at the moment, but I played Steve Hart in the gang.
Right.
And that was produced at the Newtown Theatre in Sydney, to come down here for the games, and it was a flopperoo.
Oh.
So I found myself back in Australia.
See, what happens then if you're in a play and it drops? Do you still get paid out, or well, that's it, sorry mate?
Well, if you are under contract for a certain number of weeks, of course you've got to be paid for that contract. But if you're paid for the run of the play,
I see.
the run of the play is 6 weeks. Well, you get 6 weeks' work out of it.
Yeah.
And kaput.
Obviously, when you went into acting, like all of us, you had the ambition to make front cover Time magazine.
Yes.
How do you feel now?
Well, I've been in a few magazines, but you had to turn over a few pages to find me. But yes, I popped up in a few of them, but not Time magazine or the Bulletin or any of those.
I mean, Australia, for such a small population, especially when you were there, was about 10 million people, we actually gave the world some very talented actors.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
I mean, look, Thring.
Yes, but of course.
He's got to stop doing. What was his name? The guy, the swashbuckler. Errol Flynn.
Errol Flynn,
that one there.
Yeah.
And McKern, Your Good Self.
Yes.
Well,
yes, but they made names. I didn't make a name. I made a living, but I didn't make a name.
Did anyone, especially perhaps your family, etc., say, Lloyd, when are you going to get a real job?
My brother said, go for it if that's what you want to do. And my mother, of course, thought I was marvellous. And my father, there was no objection at all.
That's good. Did you make the transition? Did you move into television acting?
Oh yes, yes. In early days, that's what I'm saying. We feel we subsidised some of the companies because they just didn't have the money, and they were trying to do shows. So we had to. I was in some of those shows where we had to make up our own dialogue. We would give an outline of a character.
What would you prefer, the TV or the live?
What I enjoy about the theatre is the instant rapport, that you know immediately if you're after laughs and you don't get a laugh, you know there's something wrong.
Sure.
But in front of a television camera, you don't. You are in the hands of the director.
Now, have you ever stood on stage and thought, whoops, they're not liking this?
Oh yes.
What happens?
You press on rewardless.
Yeah.
Just hope that you don't get pelted with coins.
Now, when did you stop acting? Because you're still...
Well...
You still got it all?
They don't write a lot of roles for 80-year-olds. Unless you write your own and do a one-man show.
Wow. There was no NIDA in those days.
No.
How did you train?
Well, it was sink or swim if you managed to get a job. And of course, the first thing they would ask you is, have you any experience? What experience have you got? Well, they knew you didn't have much because there weren't that many people around. Not that many companies around. It was J.C. Williams and Zagana Carroll or one or two others. But when I first began, I asked a well-known actor of the day. He was then in his, I suppose, 70s. I said, his name was Claude Fleming. I said, Mr. Fleming, how do I learn to act? where, because there were, as you just said, no niders, nowhere. You'd get a voice coach and that would be about it, or someone who would give you a few tips. And he said, get on the stage and act, dear boy. That's how you learn. Well, of course, you've got to get on the stage.
That's right.
It's a sort of catch-22.
Best advice anyone's given you was what you've just said. The worst advice you were ever given?
Other than join the army.
Yeah, I can see that one. Something that your mother told you that you've always remembered?
My mother said, remember this, always do your best. And she said, good, better, best. Never, never rest until your best is better or your better, best.
Ooh.
So she said, so I had that typed out and put inside my makeup case.
Right.
And I used to sort of look at that. I think,
They're very good words.
yeah.
Very good words. Your most favourite play, the play that you've performed in and you really enjoyed?
It's a good question because there's several. We always say the best play is the one that's paying you at the moment. But in retrospect, I'm a great fan of Steinbeck.
Oh, I love his work. I've read all his books. You're a great man.
Of Mice and Men.
Oh, yes.
Now, I played the one that had to shoot the dog.
Right.
Now, there was Ray Lawler directed that play, and he kept saying to me through rehearsal, now, don't worry, we've got a dog, and it'll be okay on the night, you know, it'll be okay because it belongs to someone in the theatre, one of the stagehands, and it comes in the theatre, it knows the theatre, and it'll be okay. Well, through rehearsals, I said, well, when am I going to see the dog?
Yeah.
And it was getting very close to the, the opening night. And I had to pick the dog up. The dog wouldn't lead. They said it would lead. It would not lead. I could not lead it. So I went to pick it up and,
oh, no.
and bit me. So we thought, well, that can't happen every night, of course. So they said, well, we don't know where to get a dog now because it was 2 days off opening. And I said, well, I've got a dog, which is a sheep dog, and it'll do anything for me. They said, well, bring it in, bring it in. So I brought it in, had it signed up, but it was not used to revolver shots. And we were in the Russell Street Theatre at the dress rehearsal to be opening that night, and someone fired a revolver. Well, my dog Maggie went and out through the front door, and I eventually caught it in Collins Street.
No kidding.
It through the traffic and up in Collins Street.
Call her old-fashioned and superstitious, but oh, no.
They say never act with animals or children.
Lloyd, it's been a real thrill having you on the programme. But before you go, why don't you sing You Must Remember This? You must remember this.
A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh.
That'll do. Go on.
As time goes by.
The fundamental things apply as time goes by.